How's it going, everybody? My name is, first and foremost, welcome to the first session in the Cultural Enrichment and Professional Development Training Series. We are thrilled that you decided to join us on a Saturday to be equipped with the different types of skills that are going to help you thrive in any work environment. My name is Kyle Lackey. I am the program coordinator in the Advanced Workforce Center, and I have the honor to introduce our facilitator, Bernia Lester. So, Bernia Lester currently serves as the Director of Communication and Community Relations at Site Improvement Association, where she engages with key construction industry and community leaders to improve the effectiveness of workforce development programs, develop new minority contracting and workforce participation opportunities, and assist contractors with diversity and inclusion efforts while also strengthening sites' internal and external communications outreach. She currently sits on the board of directors at the Construction Forum and Nurses for Newborns. Cabernia currently co-chairs a committee that is focused on retention and recruitment efforts that will engage more diversity in the workforce. She has over 16 years of experience creating and maintaining strategic partnerships and building meaningful relationships. She co founded The Art of Adaptation with her husband, a consulting firm that trains and advises organizations on diversity, equity, inclusion, company culture, and psychological safety. During her time with UMSL's Community Innovation and Action Center, she was the Learning and Evaluation Manager. In this role, Bernia helped our nonprofits or organizations build capacity through collaboration and partnership portfolios. She has worked with organizations such as Urban Housing, Legal Services of Eastern Missouri, Neighborhood Vacancy Project, Turn the Page STL, and many more. She received her bachelor's in science degree in broadcasting journalism from Northwest Missouri State University, a master of arts degree in media communication and media literacy from Webster University, and a master of science degree in education. She is a native St. Louis Missourian and spends her free time chasing her 5 and 7-year-old son, Dane and Leyland, around the world. She's been married to Daniel F. Lester, her best friend for the last 13 years, and is passionate for building meaningful relationships, creating impactful partnerships, and finding solutions. Bernia, welcome. The stage is yours.
Well, thank you, Kyle, for that introduction. I wish I could see you all, but I can't. So I'm not a stranger to talking to myself. So this should be okay. But there will be opportunity for you to participate. So let's get started. Let me just go right here. So this is the audience participation code. It's for something that we call Mentimeter. Mentimeter allows you to engage with me. So even though I can't see you, I can still hear from you. And of course, we have our Zoom chat function and the Zoom Q&A. So if you have any questions, it comes right on my screen. I can see if you have questions, feel free to stop me because I do want to engage with you. That's all. That's what community is all about, is engaging with each other. So I will give you guys a chance to grab your, if you have your phones or another computer screen or anything, and if you can scan that participation code, that QR code, it will lead you to Mentimeter. And the next question that I ask will the next question I'm asked will allow you to participate. So the question that's coming up, and I can tell you, because I know you guys are scanning in, I want everyone, um, I want everyone to give me just three things that you are grateful for today. What do you show gratitude? The reason why I always start with gratitude and being grateful is because there's a lot going on in our lives. There's a lot that happens from a day-to-day basis. There's lots of life stresses. We're busy, we're stressed, we're burned out. We're just trying to make it. But sometimes it's hard to complain when you are showing gratitude. And I appreciate every one of you guys that have joined this morning on a Saturday. I know that's also very hard as well. So feel free. So the question is going to be gratitude. And so let's move and see if we can get you Um, right, right. And just so Kyle did, if you can participate with the QR code, you can always participate in the chat. So if you participate on this, we will see the responses of people that pop up. So what are the three things you are grateful for? Let's see if we get anyone that's able to enter it in. And let me know if I need to go back to the QR code. Oh, there we go. We got some answers. We're going through, so family is grateful. We're grateful for life. I definitely have a story for you about that. Grateful for our friends, the opportunity to learn, community. Um, those things are huge. Let's see. This is a what we call a word cloud. This is going to show us some of the things that are common to a lot of us, right? Some people, the ones comment, they're thankful for fall. I'm certainly thankful for fall, especially since I like to wear long sleeves most of the year. Babies, yes, I got two of them upstairs. I'm glad you can't hear them. Smiling, but one of the biggest common denominators right now is family. Just being grateful for the people we call family, the people that we love. So we got 7 people responding, out of 12. I'll give it a couple more. One of the things that the word cloud should show you is that commonalities between a lot of people. So the bigger, if you're familiar with word clouds, the bigger the word, that is more people saying the same thing. Um, so it shows some commonality with that as well. Now, personally, what I am grateful for is I'm just grateful for the opportunity to teach and to learn from you guys, to be in community. And I am very thankful for my family. My small one, my firstborn, Dane, turned 7 yesterday. So yesterday was his birthday. Today is his birthday party. So always on a Saturday, right? We got a lot of things going on. So we have 7 people responding. So we'll move on. So we're talking today about cultural intelligence as it relates to how we relate to each other. This is such an important topic because it covers so much of the human skills that we want to relate to. I was talking with Kyle earlier, and we were talking just about employers wanting their workers to have more human skills. They want their workers to have the ability to not only do the technical task that's relevant, they also want them to have the necessary tasks to have the grit, have the communication skills, have be able to take feedback and give feedback. So one of our learning objectives for today, I'm going to go over objectives. And so one is cultural architecture. We're going to build a culture of what culture looks like, how to define that, review what those building blocks are, and discuss just some key cross-cultural intelligence through through cultural humility. And we're going to learn how to create a psychologically safe culture. Psychologically safe culture is the goal. That's the goal that we're trying to create. And when we go over culture, we'll see that there's a lot. Next, we'll be going over some of the risks related to culture. We're going to talk about fear, some of those barriers and how we engage in cross-cultural environments. We're going to talk about the KVP, that we're going to talk about kindness as an approach to guide us on how to create relationships with others effectively. And then I'm going to give you some practical tools, right? Some things that you can practice. One of the most important things when it comes to dealing with people is you have to practice. You have to practice for how you respond to them. You have to practice on what to do when you do not agree, when there is any conflict. So these are the objectives that we are going to go over today. And like I said, I am excited that you're going on this journey with me as well. So let's get into it. So let's talk about culture. I'm moving my little thing here. All right. So let's talk about the building blocks of culture. What is included when we talk about how culture is formed, right? Culture, the first thing we got to understand that we live in a society. In our society, that's kind of a fact, right? Society is America, or it's just the world itself. In society, there are set rules, legal, we have laws to govern people, right? We have society, but in society, that being more of a fact about population in a territory, what we're looking at more is culture. And culture in and of itself is a conceptual idea. What that means is that it is made up of a lot of things. There are a lot of cultures that we know for ourselves. You have work cultures, you have cultures, you have cultures based off ethnicity, you have cultures based off race, you have cultures based off just being parents, you have even subcultures of my favorite parents with some of my friends have teenagers, and their teenagers have almost a different language. One of my friends wanted her son to stop calling her bruh, which was very hard because, um, yeah, it can be very um, discouraging when your son calls you bruh, or as my son did after watching his tablet. After giving him dinner one night, he called my dinner sus. So obviously, for reasons he didn't want to eat it, but he made him eat that. But how dare he call my dinner sus, right? Or it's suspectful, or whatever it is, whatever terms they use, whatever. So we have culture. Now, the most important thing to know when it comes to society, when it comes to culture, when it comes to these building blocks, right? The most common denominator in all of this is people. People make up culture, and people in and of themselves are it's a myriad of different things, characteristics, values. So culture, when we start with culture, we start with our individual habits. And this is how kind of culture culminates together. So culture is how you see the world. How do we see the world? This is based on our values, what we value, our core values. Generally, when me and my husband are presenting, we always start the group with identifying what are your core values, right? And the purpose of that is when we are in these group settings, we want to make sure that people understand that a lot of their values, go hand in hand, but those values still start with you. They're shaped by different things about your lived experience, where you grew up, how you grew up, any trauma that you've been through, the pain that you've suffered, all the happy moments, the defining moments, the great things that make you feel great, the things you're grateful for, all those things matter. Your lived experience matter. How you were treated when you were at a company, how you were treated when you were just a little one at school, how your teachers treated you, all those experiences matter. The next thing that shapes our individual habits are our biases. Now, they say that biases are formed almost by the time we're 5 years old. So, whatever that child is experiencing all the way to five, they've already formed bias. Bias is always a tricky subject because bias is not always bad, right? It sometimes can be used to protect us, especially if our biases are formed from our lived experiences. So, for instance, when I was in the first grade, one of my teachers had a spelling test every Friday, and if you missed, um, based on how many questions you missed, you would be able to be the first one to get a donut from the teacher. And I remember I wasn't the greatest speller, and so I remember seeing all the kids, some of the smarter kids in the class, getting 100 on their spelling test, and then they were able to get a donut. Um, and by the time it got to how many I missed, there was nothing left. That was an experience with me that affected me for the course of my life about how I saw justice and how I saw kids being treated, and making sure things are fair and equitable is the reason, could be just one of the things or many variables is the reason why I fight so hard for equity and inclusion. I felt very excluded in that instance. Things are also made up of our fears. Um, our biases are influenced by our fears, but all these things, that's who we are altogether. So listen, so you take your individual habits, who you are, your values, your experience, what you believe, then you add that into a group. And we usually call these things group norms. And this can be a team group, a work team, whatever it is. But this is how we interact. These are the unwritten rules, right? The unwritten rules of certain culture. If you are in a workplace culture, depending on what industry you work in, based on those unwritten rules of behavior or things that we should know, we we act accordingly. For instance, I would not recommend that on a construction job site that you would wear a tuxedo, right? Or a suit or even a business suit, right? There's certain things that we know we need to have: safety equipment, hard hats, safety vests, work boots, steel toe boots. We know that, right? There's unspoken. The behavior is also a little bit different. Something different that I've learned, which I've had the opportunity between switching so many. If you heard my bio, I've switched through a lot of careers. Um, on a construction job site, it's a matter of life and death sometimes, right? So how they communicate, there's an unwritten, has to be quick and has to be direct sometimes. And sometimes they can also seem a little harsh, right? They're the expectations of that group norm, like how you want to proceed. And whether that group norm is good or bad, there are unwritten rules. The behavior should kind of match each other within that group norm. And those group norms lead to culture. In the For the sake of what we're talking about, when I'm talking about culture, I'm going to kind of be referring more to community and company culture and how we behave. And that's the collective behavior, the shared values, the overall environment. We see it all the time, even in company culture. My husband makes fun of me all the time because of my addiction to Starbucks. He thinks it's completely ridiculous that that I spend my time and money going to what he says is the most disgusting coffee in the world. That's just not the case for me. It's the best thing ever. It's become definitely a reputation, but Starbucks has a certain culture, a certain environment that I love. When I was growing up in high school, seeing Starbucks was just, really becoming at least noticeable to me. It seemed like they had created a culture of like sophistication. I like the lighting, the dark lighting and the customer service and the burrito and all of that attracted me to where now I'm kind of really sold into the culture of Starbucks as well. So that's looking at just how we build culture. But the most important thing you should know, especially as we continue to talk about cross-cultural intelligence in relation to how we communicate, is that it always starts with you. You are the biggest factor in how company culture or how any culture will show up um, as well. You definitely have the ability to influence that. So the key, when I talk about the key, what is the key to creating good company culture? The first key is cultural humility. Cultural humility, and I know you can read the definition, but in a nutshell, um, there used to be this thing, there's a term called cultural competency, and there's a difference. I use cultural humility because this lets me know you will not be able to understand or digest everything there is about every single culture at all. There's no way. What cultural humility says is that, hey, I have a more flexible approach to how I examine my own values, my own beliefs as I learn from others, grow from others. Cultural competency, one of the things is like, I'm going to try to learn as much as I can so I can engage. I admittedly have what's called ADHD, and I do not remember every single term, every single terminology. I can recall a time when I was working in higher ed. Um, one of the professors, I was working at a nursing university. One of the professors, we were going over just some aspects of diversity and how we wanted to communicate that to our teams and to some of our students. And it was interesting. There was a new term at the time, BIPOC. It was Black, Indigenous people of color was the term. And she stopped me, she was a Black woman. She said, Bernea, I feel really bad and I probably should know this, but I don't know what BIPOC means. What did that tell me in the moment? People do not know every single thing about every culture, and nor should you feel like you have to. What you want to get into the habit of is using cultural humility, which says that, hey, I'm going to look at my values and examine my beliefs, and I'm going to be open to learning about others, even if I don't agree. So there's pretty much two requirements that we want to look at when we're looking at cultural humility. So one of those things is there's two things, two requirements. One, you want cultural humility requires you to build relationships, and it requires you to understand yourself and understand who you are in your engagement in your cross-cultural communication with others. So one thing about building relationships, and we'll start there at building relationships. So consider other perspectives, especially when you disagree. There has been plenty of times and plenty of environments, especially in the construction industry, when I talk to people who we don't agree with. We don't agree with some of the political landscape. We don't agree with some of the leadership models, but considering other perspectives puts me in a place to where I have to learn and get over some things. Now, what I will tell you that's awesome about building relationships and looking, even if you disagree, is that you can disagree with someone and still be able to communicate effectively with them and build a relationship with them. Because sometimes we think that when we are disagreeable, that person is automatically against who we are. And that's a dangerous place to be when we're building relationships. We have to give people the benefit of the doubt. We have to give people grace. The second thing when it comes to building relationships, you have to be able to ask questions, even and be okay with the answer that you have. Sometimes we'll ask a question and we're only asking it to either prove a point or to make sure that that person knows, how silly it is. But we ask questions for learning. We do not ask questions for the reasons of proving people wrong. That's not how you build great relationships. Secondly, authenticity. I do not like, personally, one of my own personal pet peeves, Barry's, I have a problem with people being, not being authentic to who they are. If you're engaging with me, I want to see your authentic self. I don't want you to feel like you have to be someone that you're not. I remember going to school. I went to Rockwood School District, and if you're not familiar around here, it's West County. The population is primarily Caucasian. I'm one of the only Black students, and I remember there was a little boy in class at the time that, because of what he had seen or his perceived sense of what my culture was, would start conversations like, "Hey, what's up, girl?" Like, "Hey, what you doing?" And it was sometimes demoralizing because he didn't take time to 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 know who I was. It's very hard for me to deal with people being, their authentic selves. How do you be authentic when someone is making fun of you? Or how are you, how do I create a relationship with someone who feels like they have to be someone else? That's why it's important with building relationships, right? Because we just don't know. And understand you don't always need to be right. This is something that a lot of us struggle with, because sometimes we feel like if we're not right, then somehow it devalues our opinions, or it values who we are. And that's just not the case. Building relationships allows you to do a whole lot of learning with each other. I have known my husband for 29 years, married for 13 years. And both of us in conversations have had to come to the realization that even though I'm probably right most of the time, that I'm not right all the time. But you don't always have to be right. And it's not a negative thing. It's a learning opportunity. You not you not always being right is not failure. It's learning. We have to continue to learn from those failures. Now, the second part of cultural humility, which is kind of the key to the key to all this, is understanding yourself. And in understanding yourself, assume nothing, right? We have our own set of beliefs and values, what we believe is the right thing, the wrong thing, how we believe things should go. And sometimes we take those assumptions and we place them on other people, but assume nothing. You need to be okay with knowing that you do not know everything. And it's always great to ask yourself questions before engaging with someone, just in case you just don't know everything you need to know. That allows you to challenge your own norms, your own personal perceptions, what you've heard, the things that you've heard on the media, the things that you've heard on social media, especially, right? It allows you to challenge your own norms, to know yourself. Some of us, like I said, we don't even know our own cultures that we belong to. We know how we might engage in them, but there's some things that we don't know all the way as well. So consider that. Consider your own norms and consider before you engage. Ask yourself questions. One of my favorite questions that I like to ask myself, is it any of my business before I go approach somebody, right? I'm always telling people to mind their own business. And what I mean by that is, taking a look in a mirror, doing some my own self-reflection and analyzation and saying, hey, do I know who I am as a person before I engage or judge someone else, before I judge another young man or you judge the millennial worker that's, in your community or the new Gen Zs that go up? Do I understand me and have I asked the right questions? Because what you'll find out is that a lot of people engage, um, engage each other before they have all the information. That causes a lot of conflict. That's why I say if we're minding our business, making sure that we are doing what we have to do, it's always just a better outcome. Awesome. So now, before we move on, I kind of want to get into just what are some of the perceived risks of culture and engaging in culture. And I want to hear from you. And what I mean about those perceived risks, why don't people engage in your perspective? Why don't people engage? Why are people scared? What are the risks? What's the fear? What's behind it? So I'll give you guys a chance. All right. I like this because I can kind of address these as they come in, and hopefully you can see them in. So saying something that's insensitive without meaning to, man, how often are we walking on eggshells? How often do we fear that if we're not going to be politically correct or say the right thing, we're going to risk it all, right? Um, risk offending that person, causing injury or damage, accidentally afraid to offend because you're not understanding, feeling shamed or embarrassment for being ignorant. That's a huge thing. And it's a very interesting statement, just in the sense of that feeling shame or embarrassment all comes from really a source of fear, right? More fear. You're afraid my identity might just be offensive to others and they'll be violent. I am a part of the LGBTQ plus community. That is a very valid fear of why you don't engage, why you don't want to take the risk. You don't want to offend others. and they'll be violent. But you know what? Some of these things, right, we can't really control. What we can control is making sure that we understand who we are and being okay with the risk of failure. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Um, Tokenism, making someone feel like they are the token, making someone feel like, hey, out of this minority group, we got just who we need, just the people we need. That happens. Ironically, that happens a lot. That happens all the time. So one interesting thing about the construction industry, one of the things that I um, is privy to, have to engage in a lot is our contractors are met with goals from different agencies, and it's not hypothetical. It's really literal. You need 10% minority participation and women participation, 10% women, participation when it comes to subcontracting work, when it comes to workforce. You need these hard numbers, right? And so that fear is common even among the contractors. You have to say, like, man, I have to hire more minorities, have to hire more women as well. And it's that feeling of making someone feel that they're not valued because they are, or maybe the only one, or never, or not, or be the only one of a minority group, right? That is a very value and perceived risk. Not knowing, being seen as ignorant, all of those things are great risks that's identified that we have, and we'll talk about what that looks like moving forward, because I'm going to come back to some of these things. So the next question I want to ask you is your perception of kindness. So why is kindness often viewed as weakness? So kindness, I just want to know however you define kindness, why in society is kindness often viewed as weakness? And I'm telling you, like I said, I work in an industry, like I said, where construction is definitely something very different. I would say, I've been in corporate America, I've been in the corporate America space, I've been in the education space, right? But I am in the construction space where it is not popular to use words like kindness and empathy, and you know but you know what, and that sometimes that's really just an assumption. It's not even all the way true, because those are people too, as well. So being vulnerable can be unsafe, absolutely, because vulnerability exposes you, because society tells me that as a man I need to be strong or firm. There's gender norms that I'm trying not to fall into. Absolutely, definitely the messages that we're seeing. Let's see. Let me move my. Some may see it as feminine in a negative way, or even uncool to be kind, right? And we all know that there's just so much power that women have. Some people believe that as a community we should be less sensitive, which they use as an umbrella statement to cover some forms of kindness. I love that. I love that thought as well. Let's see. Do you have any more? I know some are probably still popping up. Kindness can be seen as not being confident in yourself or lowering yourself around others. That's a powerful statement, especially when it comes to lowering yourself. So let's see, a few more. It is a ridiculous thought process. Absolutely. It really makes no sense, especially when we go kind of into what we're going to go into next, which is really talking about creating a psychologically safe culture, which you're going to do through an avenue of kindness and what true kindness really means. So Kindness. Let's look at it. Kindness. This is from General Colin Powell. So most of you know him, but yes, he was a general. He worked under President. He worked under many presidents, but under President Bush in particular. And this is what he said about kindness. This is someone that is in the military. They say kindness is not about being nice. It's about recognizing another human being who deserves care and respect. So when we talk about cross-cultural intelligence and communication and engagement, kindness says it's not about being nice. Now, there's a difference between being nice and being kind. Niceness is, you know, I might not say something to you if I, you know you have issues with, how you look, right? Even though you have something in your teeth. Like, "Oh, you look fine," right? You don't wanna cause conflict, you're being nice. Kindness says, "Hey, Imma pull you to the side and say, hey, before you get up and present to these people, just wanna let you know that there's something stuck in between your teeth." It's the difference between someone letting you walk with toilet paper stuck on your shoe and someone, because they don't wanna confront you, they're being nice, "Oh, like, just let them be." But that kindness says, I don't want you to feel or be embarrassed. Let me tell you what that looks like. And these things, the kindness is the avenue to really kind of creating psychologically safe environments, right? It's recognizing the humanity of a person, how you include them, how are you inclusive to them, how do you give them the respect and just the basic respect and integrity that they deserve just for being human. Let's start there, right? Just for being who that person is, for what they are, and going from there. So kindness is not about being nice. It's about recognizing that humanity that we all possess. So psychological safety. So what psychological safety is it's our vulnerabilities. And someone mentioned being vulnerable earlier when we talked about kindness. They're shaped by our past experiences, beliefs, perceptions, fears, and even our goals. Psychological safety says a lot of things. So, psychological safety was first introduced by Amy Edmondson at Harvard, and she said that it was the shared feeling that it's okay to be open and honest in a group without fear of retaliation or ridicule. The fear that we have when we're engaging in culture, and some of the things that we talked about in one of the earlier questions, one of those things is that we're afraid that we're going to offend someone, that we're going to take missteps, and then we're going to be seen as the bad guy. But in a psychologically safe culture, especially work culture, is saying, hey, because of the relationship, right? The relationship is what's really important. Building relationship. I know that when I tell you that you need a peppermint because your breath stinks, that you're not going to be mad at me or try to take it out on me or embarrass me. There's no going to be any retaliation or ridicule. But on a more serious tip, even in a work environment, there are some people who are horrible when it comes to leadership. They like to lead. They like to lead on fear, manage on those, but that's just not effective to great team culture, to great culture at all. Because when your employees fear you, when people fear you, it's only going to make them close up and shut off. And that's what you don't want. You want a culture. You want your culture, especially your work culture, whatever it is, you want to be able to innovate. You want to be able to move forward. You want to be able to do great things. And so when you have fear involved, that fear that someone's going to retaliate or ridicule you because you're sharing some authentic feelings, thoughts, or beliefs, what does that do to you? It shuts you off. So what psychological safety is that we're taking fear out of it. There's something that we kind of use in the term called, you have social friction and intellectual friction. Social friction are those things that are very, very prevalent when we're talking about culture to culture or talk about different dealing with different people, right? That's what you don't want. You want intellectual friction, the ability to be open, honest, and to be able to share. The next part of that definition was coined by Dr. Timothy Clark in his 4 stages of psychological safety. Now, typically when I teach psychological safety, it's really its own thing. So I'm giving you a very abbreviated version. So I do always suggest that you look at those 4 stages. But the 4 stages of psychological safety, just to give you a quick breakdown, says, look, the first stage starts with inclusion safety. What inclusion safety is that basic recognizing people's basic humanity, that they need respect, that you're giving them respect to the respect to just be human and to accept them and include them for that. And you're giving them permission to be themselves, to show up as their authentic selves, but hopefully the best versions of their authentic selves, and you being patient. The next level of that is what we call learner safety. That's when you're in an environment, you're giving people an opportunity to learn. This is kind of what we talked about earlier when we're talking about kind of what that cultural humility is, right? That giving people that ability to learn, to ask questions, to fail. If you are a team leader, if you are a leader, whether it's of yourself or a group of people, you have to give people the benefit of the doubt. You have to give people the benefit to be able to ask questions, and maybe it is offensive, maybe it's not. And even in people's responses, you giving people benefit of the doubt as well. People are going look, you're going to offend people most times, whether you like it or not. But if you're doing it with the intent of being kind, with the intent of learning, I think sometimes people can really see that. People can really read authentic behavior. It's okay, right, to create what this says, a culture of rewarded vulnerability, right? Rewarded vulnerability means that instead of in your vulnerable state, me punishing you, that I'm going to reward you. How does that look? It can look like a few things. If you're in a company culture, it can look like the fact that when you ask me a question, that I take time to answer your question. It is the just the whole instance of being heard, right? Hearing someone, respecting someone, understanding, valuing who they are. It can look like when if you have employees, when they fail, you being able to look at that as an opportunity to coach them. It's saying that it's not saying what it doesn't do is say, hey, like I have an open door policy, but then when someone comes through your open door, you say, I don't have time. That's not rewarded vulnerability. It's giving people tasks without giving them training, right? Without giving them resources. That's not rewarded, right? What's rewarded is making sure you give people what they need to be successful. So rewarded vulnerability is really how we make sure that we're making people feel safe. But again, it's not about being nice. You might not agree. If you have a team, you might not agree with everything that they're saying. I remember I had when I was a director at the university where I was working at the nursing school. I had a lot. I had a lot of people under me, and we would have meetings on the different processes that we had when it came to our recruitment of our students as well. There was a lot of disagreement, but because I was intentional in practicing psychological safety, I want to hear every idea. And even if I don't agree with their idea, that doesn't give me the right to not speak to that person out of kindness. Based on my own personal values, beliefs, what I believe, the culture that I identify, which is going to be that culture of kindness that we talk about. I've gotten fired from a job for standing up on those core values, right? Believing that people should be treated a certain way. My boss at the time, this is another company, um, and he felt that creating psychological safe environments was weak. He told me that as the director, over my group of advisors, I should be treating them more as more of kind of as a dictator, right? They should be told what to do. I should be angry sometimes, and that's not me, and neither statistically or through evidence has it ever been proven that leading that way is very effective. Yeah, fear does get you some things, but it doesn't get you a lot. It definitely gets high turnover. It gets people, it gets you not being innovative, right? You want to be adaptive, as a person, as a company, as however you show up in the community environment, you want to be adaptive to different things. So it just doesn't make sense when we tell ourselves, hey, we're going to treat people a certain way because the norm is that the best managers and leaders treat their people, well, horribly. You tell them what to do. You don't listen to their ideas. You don't listen to what they have to say. That's what's going to do. That's what's going to be the best for us as well. So that's a horrible way to do that. So psychological safety, that's the goal, right? That's where we want to get with the cultures that we deal with. As for communicating, the goal is psychological safe environments. When you feel safe, when you feel safe and you make others feel safe, a lot of great things can happen. A lot of innovation can happen as well. So let me go on. So this is a quote by Dr. Martin Luther King. It says, men hate each other because they fear each other. And they fear each other because they don't know each other. And they don't know each other because they are often separated from each other. Now, what I was doing, all of my research and kind of figure out everything I wanted to say and how I would in myself be vulnerable. I said, I was looking for a quote. This one was perfect. One of the things on the description for the course was like, what's the risk of culture, right? Which was first a little difficult for me to ask. I really had to think about it. But I'm thinking like a lot of the things, if you think back to our previous slides and some of the things that we said about kindness, what we've said about why people don't engage, fear is always that underlining thing. I'm afraid that I might be seen as ignorant. I'm afraid that people might not accept me for who I am, no matter what community I identify with, and my whatever gender or whatever gender identity, whatever it is, race, ethnicity, people are afraid. They're afraid. We're afraid of each other. And why are we afraid of each other? It all goes back to the fact that we need to work at creating relationships. And I will tell you, it's not comfortable. You have to be very comfortable with being uncomfortable when you're engaging new relationships, when you're trying to create good company, good, safe company culture, psychologically safe culture. Um, this is what causes the hate, right? It is easier for us to accept what we hear about others and their groups and their culture than it is for us to actually engage people and ask questions. Think about this. This is not a Mentimeter question, but think about how many times you've actually engaged someone that was different from you and you've gotten a negative response. You may have in some instances, but just in my I don't want to tell how old I am because some of you I might look really young, but just in my age, I have known that when you authentically ask people questions, you will find out that they're grateful for the same things that you named earlier of what you were grateful for family, for love, for community, the enjoyment of the seasons, the fall, all those different things. People have that in common. But um, because we let some of our biases and what have fed into that, what the media has done to us. If you remember Kyle reading my bio, he mentioned that I have a master's degree in media literacy, media communication, media literacy. The reason why media literacy was so important for me at the time is because I wanted to understand the power of how the media psychologically affect mass groups of people. And doing that research, being able to have that opportunity to study that, it's very jarring almost. It could almost be discouraging to know that the media right, has a lot of power. The things that we listen to from our family and friends, historical context, you know, I hear stories all the time of people who said that their grandparents felt a certain way about a certain group of people, but when they engaged in talking to that person that was different from them, that was from a different culture, then it was completely different, right? It was a completely different experience, and they just didn't understand. And why? Is because we let fear drive us, and we have to get over that fear. And I'm going to make sure you know some of those things to kind of help you get over that. But hey, we don't know each other. We don't take time to get to know each other. And that's because we like to stay separated in our own silos. But here's the thing, whether you're at work, community, St. Louis, in Missouri, wherever you are, the United States, we can't innovate without each other. Like I mentioned to you, other culture is made up of people, and people it's made up of you. We are the people, right? We have control. We can start changing and creating our new, a new normal of ways of engaging with others. So don't let fear be that driver. So one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to set what I call a kindness value proposition. And so and I'm going to show you, have this book called The ROI of Kindness. It's by Brian Brio and Mac Anderson, right? The return on investment of kindness. And he mentions in his book, the kindness value proposition. So your KVP, what that does is defines who you are, and it makes it simple and automatic to do the right things with passion and energy. You can't control what happens to you when you're engaging with people. You really can't. I was talking with my husband, and I said, what if someone had the question of like, what if I engage and it completely fails, right? How do I respond? People always say it's not how you do things, it's how you respond to like the action. How do you respond? Well, it has to, you understanding who you are, your own value proposition, that compass that's going to kind of guide you. That's what's important when you're engaging, right? Another thing why kindness matters, right? Because we don't know what people are going through. This statement means a lot to me because as I was preparing for the presentation at work on Thursday, my husband called, and he gave me the news. He told me that my brother had committed suicide that morning. So this is Thursday, so it's very fresh, and our family is still going through this. So not only am I dealing with that, I know that my son's birthday is the next day, and I'm trying to protect him. I know that I have to make sure I'm present for this presentation because it's so important for me to talk to community as well, and just kind of dealing with all these different things, right? But why kindness matters, and kindness is not niceness. Kindness matters because you just don't know what people are going through. You don't know what they've been through. You don't know what's coming up. You don't know what they have going on at home. You don't know their history. You don't know why they lash out. Have you ever seen someone in your work environment or in any community or environment that's so angry, right? A lot of that comes from hurt. It comes from pain. It comes from trauma. And we have to get over saying to ourselves that I'm not going to engage because of the fear, right? People need each other. At some point, what did my brother feel that he felt like he didn't have enough kindness or someone to reach out to him, right? To talk to him, to make him make another decision on Thursday. What happened, right? Mental health is important. And how we can help mental health is by really taking it easy on each other, taking the action to be kind to each other. Kindness might be seen as weakness and it might be a norm, but kindness is important. When I'm training in the field, the construction on the actual field constructors, the people who actually do the work, the skilled trades professionals, when I'm talking to them, a lot of them relate directly to what we're saying because we're coming from a place of passion. We're coming from a place of what's real, right? And everybody is going through something or have been through something or they know someone that's been through something. So practicing how to respond, practicing how to be kind, getting over those fears to cross culturally or just to communicate at all is so imperative. So nearly every moment of every day, we have the opportunity to give something to someone else. Our time, our love, our resources, all of those different things. We are talking, this webinar series is focused on human skills, right? Human skills in the workforce, right? But what is it about our culture that we've gone astray of knowing that people need they need our time. That time shows our love, that shows our kindness. We need to give people resources, right? We have all these different fears: fear of losing, fear of being replaced, fear of the competition, right? We have all these different things. But what happens if you make those things just more healthy? But just getting back to just that kindness of just not knowing what people are going through. So what I'm just going back to what I was saying, when I wrote that we never know what people are going through, that was the exact moment, when I was working through my presentation that I wrote that. It's because after all, just the research and the scientific study on kindness and all the terms and all the fancy terms that people say to each other, it's very simple. That kindness, that action word, the kindness, the compassion, the empathy, right, that we have for each other, the empathy that we can put ourselves in someone else's shoes when, whether whatever political belief you have or not, if you would look at those kids at the border and you would see them crying for their mother and father, there is no way as a human that you can't relate to the pain, whether you think they should be here or not, right? It's saying that every human life, it does matter. And it might be uncomfortable with your own set of values or the culture that you come from, but people matter. And that's how that's how you really, look at some of that cross-cultural communication as well. Well, thank you, anonymous attendee, for being vulnerable, right? Because look, vulnerability, you take risks. You take risks. People might hear you, they might think it's ridiculous. Um, Vulnerability, that term. I had to do an interview to hire an assistant director when I was the director of admissions. And in that interview, it was a group interview. So it was a lot of us at the panel. And I remember one of the advisors telling a story about a student, and in her telling the story about how she was able to impact this student and change their life, she started to cry in the moment. Now, fast forward, we are as a panel discussing, who's going to be the next, assistant director. And one of the people in the room, they said, you know, she started crying in her interview. That's unprofessional. That shouldn't happen. How do you expect to be a leader and to, you know, in to me, what I heard was, how do you expect for her to be human? And I said, but he was like, I think that's kind of a sign of weakness. We should be aware. And I said, hold on. I said, I'm going to have to disagree with you. Someone who is able to take the risk in an interview for a high position and to cry shows the humanity. Why don't we give people the benefit of doubt? Being vulnerable is very hard. And matter of fact, whether you show it or not, whether you come across as someone with a lot of ego, or you come across as like, oh, I don't have emotions, I'm professional, you still show your vulnerability. You still show, to some of us who can read right through it, that there's some insecurity there. There's some things that have influenced you to act the way that you act. There's still some insecurity. There's still some self-doubt you don't want us to know, but we can see it. We can see it, the way you blow up, the way you get angry. We can already see you're being vulnerable, but why not be vulnerable in a more safe, space, a safe environment where you can really be more of your authentic self? It's more powerful. The funny thing is that the 2 jobs that I got fired from, well, one was a layoff, supposedly, right? Me and my director didn't agree, who was over me, about how I should manage others. But in both instances, you know, because I was intentional about trying to create a psychologically safe environment. When I both times getting laid off or fired, the people from my team left that company culture. Because like I said, the culture that you create matters. They left because one of them said, I don't want to be here if you're not here. I don't feel safe. And that's huge. So that's why that matters. Why us mastering that skill, why it matters. So with all that being said, I want to have an opportunity to kind of really just kind of go over a few things, some 7 habits of kindness, what that actually looks like. How do we operationalize this, right? How do we actually do it, right? How do we, not talk about it as a concept, but how do we actually do it? So, number one, the 7 habits of kindness is being fully present in the moment, right? Create a defining moment for someone. That's easy. Just listening to someone, just saying what the person said to me anonymously. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing and being vulnerable in this moment, right? That means a lot. That's a defining moment. That shows that someone's listening, right? Being present. Your presence matters. People want, whether you think so or not, people want you to be there. I wish I could have told my brother that, but your presence matters to people. Don't ignore or reject people, right? There's one thing to be rejected and there's another thing to be ignored. I will say that rejection, at least you've acknowledged that I'm there. But when you ignore, that almost makes people feel like they are not valued. And all of us, no matter how many degrees we have, no matter how we identify, no matter what culture we're in, we are all valued the same, which is priceless. And so you have to understand that be careful not to ignore people, right? If you don't have time to talk, at least acknowledge them and tell them that you would love to talk to them, but you need to talk to them later. But just don't ignore people. Be careful about that. Another thing is blaming. Blaming, there is Brene, if you ever heard of Brene Brown, a great professor of mine in Texas, who talks about empathy. She talks about blame. She talks about vulnerability and really what that looks like as well. But she talks about blame kind of being that inward, right, feeling, that inward feeling of pain, right? It's pain coming out. Someone has to be responsible. Anything that goes wrong, something has to someone has to be responsible instead of just the variable nature of things. I, was I'm in a lot of these contractor conversations when it comes to dealing with our labor, our workforce, and dealing with how do we get more people in the trades and whose fault it is to why there's not enough minorities working in the trades right now, and or even just the workforce period. And you get contractors, people that hire, blaming the labor, the unions. Missouri is a union state, which means that we have a lot of hiring halls, and those skilled tradesmen and women, professionals, they're coming in there, they're being hired through the union. And so the union's blaming the contractors. The contractors are blaming the owners of construction, those who actually have the project or have the work. And they're blaming this. All this blaming goes on. And what does it leave us with? No solutions, right? The next time you blame someone, or you want to blame something, just think about, does it really help? Is that really helping you find the solution to the problem? You know, are there better questions that you can ask before you blame someone for something? Another thing, the next one is humility, right? The ability to be open-minded, to practice empathy, to reward vulnerability, to actively listen and learn and respond to those who are different from you. That cultural humility, like we talked about earlier, is saying, hey, I do not understand everything. I don't know. And there's no way for me to know, but I am open-minded enough to learn, right? living with gratitude. Like I told you earlier, we all name what we were thankful for. You can also do this and pass it forward. Simple thank you, right? Sometimes you will go along in life and realize that people that you're the closest to, you haven't thanked them in a while. You haven't said that you were grateful for them. But ways that you can do this. One, I thought one of the things my husband just did that was incredible is that one of his coworkers just reached a certain level of sobriety in their journey, and he bought them like a medallion and just wrote a card that he created a defining moment on purpose, right? Because how we make people feel, how we show them their value allows them to open up so that we can innovate together as a culture, innovate together with creating safe environments as well. That meant a lot to her. And so that when they heard about what has happened to our family, there's even more of that relationship, even more of that connection, right? One of the ladies in my office, when I first met her, I thought, man, we are so different. I'm probably not going to get along with her, right? That first assumption. But because of my training or practicing, I intentionally and engaged her, and she became one of my closest work buddies. She's a regular friend, you know. And when what happened Thursday with my brother happened, I could barely look at her because of that relationship. When you get to know people who you think is different from you, I thought she identified differently than me when it came to what I thought about, race relations, when I thought about political ideology, whatever it was, I thought we were just completely different. And in some cases, we are different in those cases. But we created the relationship so much that she shared with me before that her brother too had done the same thing, right? So there was commonality. That doesn't happen without us trying to get over the fear of what we think somebody might think of us or engage with, and go there to find out that we had something even more deepening and a connection that works. Those things help the relationships you build. They help you, especially when you do business, right? Because now that I have the relationship, when you say something to me, I'm not afraid to be direct with you. I can be completely honest and say that's a horrible idea. And here's why it's a horrible idea. And I can know that because of the relationship that my colleague won't think I have ill intent towards them. So we have to be fearless, in those moments. Be grateful, show gratitude, it just shows value, helps build relationships. Number 5, just listen. I said it a little bit earlier, but do they want to be heard, understood, respected, and valued. They want to be heard. They want to feel like you hear them. How do you do that, right? Simply that act of listening, asking questions. People want to feel understood. How you can make people feel understood is just clarifying what they say. So if someone says to you, I think we should go in this direction for this reason, I feel this way, then you can say, I hear you. Let me just clarify what you said. Is this what you're saying? Is this the message you're getting? And you'll either get a yes or no, but what it shows is that you're listening, that you're present in the moment, that you have a sense of humility, you're learning, right? And that you're trying to understand them. And that builds trust. Trust is imperative in any relationship, especially in the culture that we're going for, which is a psychologically safe culture. Trust is a big deal. Trust doesn't mean that we can't make mistakes. Trust just means that we're in a space to where we're always learning, giving each other the benefit of the doubt, and knowing that we don't have ill intent towards each other. Ask more than tell. That is, we have two ears and one mouth for a reason. Some of us talk a lot. We talk too much before we have understanding, right? Practice asking questions before you respond with an answer. It can be as simple as if someone comes and asks you for advice, start with asking questions first, right? Start with getting a real more solid understanding of exactly, what's going on. And number 7, you know, I would have you focus on what what you focus on is what you create. What that means is that if you're focused on building a psychologically safe culture, if you're focused on communicating between your cross-cultural communication, which I said is just communicating with people, period. When you focus on that, that's what you create. If you're focused on being cold, being abrasive, being standoffish, living in a state of fear, then that's kind of what you can just expect to happen. But don't do that. Focus on greatness. All of you came here and joined me this morning because you're focused on I want to be better at how I communicate with others, how I engage others, and always react with kindness. Yesterday I was at McDonald's, and the way the parking lot's set up, you have to go around the building, but there was someone who cut me off going in, and almost hit my car. Now I'm at this moment, like I said, with everything going on with our family, I'm already sensitive, right? Easy to anger, things like that. But because of that intentional, continuous focus on always responding with kindness, it was able for me to say, well, I don't even know what that man has been through to why he feels he's in a rush, and ask myself, right, going back to just the cultural humility of things, asking myself, does it really matter? Aren't we all in line? Aren't we all waiting? What's the benefit of me being before him? You know, if he asks me, would I let him go in front of me? Of course. So why not? He doesn't have to ask. Like I said, you just don't know. You just don't know what people are going through. Sometimes people don't know that they offend you. People don't know that they've done anything. So it's always important to give people the benefit of the doubt. Always react in kindness. Make sure you're not blaming all those things. Um, it looks like it is 12 o'clock, 11:59. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. And then I would love to talk about the next session. So let me just pull that up really quickly. All right. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to go right here. So if you want, like I said, UMSL's doing a great job with going over human skills. This is one of those. The next one is going to be inclusive workplace practices. So please join us again as we continue to move forward and really start doing what we can to teach the workforce, the leaders, whatever we can to really make sure that we're creating our own culture here in St. Louis and Missouri, and hopefully even in the United States of America as well. So please feel free to continue to follow this series. The next one's Thursday, September 28th, 5:30 to 7 o'clock p.m. So perfect. So I'm going to go back to that because there is a survey that I would love you to take that so would love to hear back from you as well. I'm going to pull it back up here. All right, let's pull that up. All right. So let's see here. I'm not cutting over the code. Thank you guys for all the kind words as well. And here we go. We'll love to hear from you. Scan that QR code. This is different from the Mentimeter one. Scan that QR code. We would love to hear from you. I'm Bernea Lester again. Here is my contact information, Bernea@sitestl.org. I will be providing I will be providing my slide deck to everyone. I'll be giving that to so they can disseminate that moving forward to you guys. And yeah, I appreciate everyone here. So Kyle, you want to take it over from there and You want to and dismiss us?
Yes, absolutely. First and foremost, wow. I think your vulnerability has truly impacted everyone here. As you can see, the responses in the chat. I think that in order for us to grow as a society, we have to grow from within. And being real and authentic with ourselves helps us be real and authentic with others. So I just can't express enough gratitude for you showing up today and providing the quality content that you have. Attendees, thank you so much for being here today. Again, if you could take a moment to scan the QR code to complete the survey, your feedback is incredibly appreciated. And if you found value in this workshop, I know I certainly have. I encourage you to attend the next workshop. The link is in the chat. Register it just like you have here, and let's grow together, right? So the vision of the St. Louis or the community that we want is it starts with us and you showing up today and getting the competencies that we have built into this workforce training series is only the start. We plant seeds, and as you live, you are growing. You're watering your garden to bear fruit to support others. So, again, thank you all for coming here today. Bernia, thank you so much for being here.
I
You
thank
are
you
so
so much for
thankful.
having me.
Absolutely. So, everybody, I will see you at the next session, and have a great Saturday. Goodbye.